Welcome back to another segment of Behind the Scenes of the Waltons. As I continue reviewing episodes from season 1, we are up to the reunion. Now you might notice I'm skipping over some, but that's because they're segments that I already talked about a bit before. So who knows, before I'm done with all this behind the scenes, maybe I'll loop back through and do them all again. You never know. Anyway, in the meantime, if you are enjoying all of these, I do appreciate if you like and subscribe. This episode was directed by Jack Shea and written by our very own Earl Hamner. So often people ask me how much of this is based on real incidents and things like that. I think perhaps when Earl wrote episodes, there might have been something in particular he was drawing it from. In this case, the episode really centers around the Baldwin sisters and their cousin Homer Lee Baldwin, who is another case of a slightly shady character. Interesting, a number of times the different people who did come in and try and take advantage of the Baldwin sisters. We had the episode of The Star where cousin Polonius came in and tried to hoodwink them into basically turning the still over to him. And in later years, we had cousin Octavia who came in. So in this case, it's cousin Homer Lee, who is once again posing a threat to the recipe. Cousin Homer Lee is played by Denver Pyle, who I'm sure many of you could give a whole list of where you've seen him in different TV shows, including being a series regular on The Dukes of Hazzard. I've talked about how the Dukes of Hazzard also filmed on the back lot of the Warner studio and that we would cross paths at times. So fun to see Denver around the studio at times. In this episode, the Baldwin sisters decide that they're going to have a family reunion, that there are Baldwins scattered all over the place. They'll gather them all together. They will make a ton of recipe and they'll have a big party. They have basically hired John Boy to help them because John Boy, knowing that his mama would like to have a washing machine, but they can't afford one, Ike has a secondhand washing machine. John Boy kind of makes a deal with Ike that he wants to purchase it, but he needs to earn the money. The Baldwin sisters happen to be in Ike's store. Miss Emily hears this and basically hires John Boy to help them with various odds and ends so that John Boy agrees because he wants to earn this money for the washing machine. This sets up our whole story because then John Boy is around to kind of encounter what's going on there with cousin Homer Lee. We start off, we're at school, and Mary Ellen is in a fight with a boy, a big bully, who has been picking on Jim Bob because Jim Bob is wearing basically a girl's blouse that was taken from a dress that Erin had. She spilled something on it. Mama couldn't get it out, so Mama decided to take the top half and make it into a shirt for Jim Bob. This bully has made fun of him for wearing girls' clothes. Mary Ellen is defending him, gets a black eye. I've been hit in the face a few times, accidentally in all cases, have never been scrapping with my brother and sister growing up. Never really in a serious fight, but I have had a bit of a black eye at times. Nothing as impressive as this one that Mary Ellen gets here. That was makeup. I always enjoy the rare occasions where I've had a little bit of extra makeup for, in this case, a black eye, or if I had cuts or did something where I was supposed to have burns. And it can be it's always fascinating to me, the whole process of special effects makeup and things like that. So I had a little bit of an opportunity to have that here in this episode. And I think it's funny that nobody wants to break up the fight because Jason's like, well, she was winning. But you do get the sense that Mary Ellen, as evidenced in numerous episodes, was not afraid and never backed down from a fight. Part of the storyline is established by the fact that John Boy doesn't have his permit. He doesn't have a license to drive. So when he needs to make some deliveries to the Baldwins and John isn't comfortable letting John Boy take the truck and drive it very far without a permit, Grandpa says he will go with him because he knows he's going to the Baldwins, and Grandpa is all about going over there, visiting the ladies and having recipe. Grandpa gets carried away. This reminded me of the homecoming when Hawthorne Dooley takes John Boy to the Baldwins, hoping that maybe they can get some gas. And of course, they, first of all, share some recipe. They sing and dance with the ladies. So here in this case is Grandpa sharing recipe and singing with the ladies. Another case of songs that we heard on the Waltons and that I sometimes used when I was doing concerts and talking about the music from the Waltons. When the Baldwin sisters are going to be taken to the pictures, their first time of seeing a talkie, there's a problem with the car. The battery's dead. Grandpa doesn't want them to be disappointed, so he decides that they will take the truck into Charlottesville. Homer Lee's objective for this is because he has a whole suitcase full of the recipe, which he is planning to sell to a contact of his in Charlottesville. So while they go to the movies, Homer Lee goes and makes a deal with Daisy. When they return home after the family having been worried, they don't know where they are. John and Olivia went over to the Baldwins because John finally confesses that's where John Boy's been working. They come home. Sheriff F. Bridges is there. And he has had word from the police in Charlottesville that John's truck was involved in transporting bootleg whiskey. So the story starts to unravel here. Mention of Homer Lee, and the sheriff laughs and says, he's got a record a mile long. And he asks John Boy to continue to work for the Baldwins and keep an eye out and let him know when something's happening so that they can actually catch him red-handed. I've been asked about how often we ad-libbed. The majority of scripts were scripted. We did say the dialogue there, but entrances and exits, beginnings of scenes, there were moments where we did ad-lib. In this case, when Mama sends the kids back upstairs, we do a bit of ad-libbing. You catch a line here and there.
What are you children doing out of bed?
We just want to see what's going on, Mama.
Well, get back to bed, all of you.
Come on, okay. We can't even see what goes on. We never get to stay up.
We creep back down and once again get sent upstairs. Once again, there are a couple little ad-libs there.
Is John Boy drunk?
Are you feeling kind of wobbly, John Boy?
Get back to bed this instant.
And then at the very end of the episode, when John Boy tells Mama to cover her eyes, we hear a couple more ad-libs.
All right, just close your eyes, everybody.
I feel like an idiot doing this.
Oh, this is silly.
So those are the types of places where ad-libs would come into play. I mentioned in a recent segment about non-speaking roles and how those things came about, what went on. Often, if there was just something like that, a non-speaking role, as there is with the actress here who is looking at the secondhand washing machine. This was actually Debbie, one of our stand-ins. So they would quite frequently grab her or one of the other stand-ins when they just needed someone to do a little bit rather than hiring somebody or bringing in a background player. But once again, she never speaks. So therefore, where the bumps go, how people get paid per union contracts. If they don't speak, they don't get paid as much as if they speak. So although Debbie would have gotten a bump for actually being on camera, she would not have gotten paid whatever the rate was for speaking. As John Boy is sent out to gather branch water for the reunion, because some people like to have a little branch water with their recipe, Homer Lee absconds with the Walton truck and all of the 140-something mason jars of recipe. So when John Boy returns, he's like, where's the truck? He hightails it. I guess he hiked on down to Ike Godsey's store, put in a phone call. In this case, it appears to be the very first time that he has used the telephone. And he calls, and we establish Fanny Tatum, who listens in on everybody's phone calls. Seems like that was sort of a running thing in movies and TV shows that were from that period, where it seemed like the operators always listened in. In this case, he lets the sheriff know that all the recipe and the truck are missing. He goes home to tell Daddy and Grandpa are hysterical about this because John figures that old truck will break down, it won't get very far, and he'll be picked up in no time, which is indeed what happens. Homer Lee is picked up, and and he is going to be captured. When John Boy realizes all the recipes gone, and the Baldwin sisters have no guests. This is reminiscent of one of the last episodes we did where the Baldwins were going to have a high school reunion or from their finishing school, and they send out all these invitations and nobody comes. Miss Mamie and Miss Emily are very sad and disappointed, and John Boy sees this. He keeps being asked about his brothers and sisters because they would love to have the sound of children in the house. He goes home and he asks his family if they will go spend an evening with the Baldwins. And because there's not an ounce of recipe in the house, Mama does agree. And they have a lemonade toast to the Baldwins. So we make a party for the Baldwins. We all get to go there and enjoy, and we are singing once again. Let Me Call You Sweetheart was a song that was used on the Waltons a number of times, and one that I have used in sing-alongs in concerts. John Boy does earn enough money to get Mama that washing machine. She is very excited about it, and all's well that ends well. That's what I have for you on this segment of Behind the Scenes of the Waltons about the reunion. I will be back with more Behind the Scenes of the Waltons and more Ask Judy. Thanks for watching.